He found her at gate B27 with his ring in her hand, and for the first time in his life, Everett Callahan realized money could buy a private jet, but it could not buy back the moment before someone stopped believing in you. JFK Terminal 4 was almost empty near midnight, the kind of empty that made every sound feel final. A cleaning cart rolled somewhere beyond the food court. A child slept against a carry-on bag near a row of blue seats. Outside the glass wall, runway lights blinked through cold rain, red and white dots stretching into the dark like a road that did not come back. The last boarding call for Seattle echoed from the speakers, calm and mechanical, as if it were not announcing the end of a life Everett had been too proud to protect. He moved fast through the terminal in a black overcoat, tie loosened, hair damp from the storm outside, his face pale beneath the bright airport lights. 35 years old, white, billionaire chief executive officer of Callahan Global, owner of cargo routes, aviation contracts, and private terminals across the country. Everett was a man used to doors opening before he reached them. But tonight every sliding glass door, every security line, every moving walkway felt like punishment for arriving late. His phone would not stop vibrating. Messages from board members, missed calls from Graham Voss, 2 voicemails from Sloan Mercer, a security update from Callahan Tower marked urgent. He ignored all of them. Only one message mattered, the one his assistant had sent 14 minutes earlier. Mia Bennett checked in for flight 418 to Seattle. One-way ticket. Everett had read those words in the back of his car and felt something inside him go silent. Not break, not yet. Silence came first. The kind that arrived when the mind understood before the heart was ready. He had not believed she would leave. That was his arrogance. He had thought hurt would keep her arguing. He had thought love would keep her waiting. He had thought the ring on her hand meant he still had time. Then he saw her. Mia sat near the window at the far end of the gate, a small navy suitcase beside her, boarding pass folded in her lap, shoulders wrapped in a beige coat that still looked too thin for the weather. She was 28, white, with light brown hair pulled loosely at the nape of her neck and eyes red from crying. She had clearly tried to stop before anyone noticed. She was not sobbing. That somehow hurt worse. Her grief had become quiet, organized, packed into a suitcase, carried through security, and placed beside her like a decision. In her right hand was the engagement ring. She held it between her fingers, not clenched, not discarded, not hidden. The diamond caught the airport light whenever her hand trembled. Everett stopped 5 feet away because his body understood what his pride had not. A woman who throws a ring away is angry. A woman who carries it to the airport is mourning something she still loved. Mia, he said. His voice sounded unfamiliar in the empty gate. She looked up slowly. For 1 second, he saw the woman who used to bring soup to his office when meetings went past midnight, who knew the names of his night security guards, who asked shuttle drivers if they had eaten during holiday shifts, who once told him the airport felt like the place where people showed their truest selves because everyone was either leaving, waiting, or hoping to be met. Then that woman disappeared behind the calm face of someone who had been hurt enough to stop explaining. You came, she said. Everett took a step closer. I went to the penthouse. You were gone. Yes. Mia, please. Her mouth trembled, but she steadied it. You found me after you lost me. The words hit him harder than anger. Behind the gate desk, an airline employee glanced over, then looked away with the mercy of someone who had seen too many endings beneath fluorescent light. Everett looked at the suitcase. 1 bag. That was all she had taken from a life he had built around locked doors and assumptions. Do not get on that plane, he said. It came out too much like an order, and he heard it the moment she did. Her eyes changed. He softened immediately. Please, I need to explain. Mia looked down at the ring. You had all night to ask me what happened before you let an entire room decide who I was. His chest tightened. Images flashed. Behind his eyes. The pre-wedding charity gala at the Callahan Aviation Foundation, the champagne, the silent investors, Sloane's perfect silver dress, Graham's grave expression as he displayed the email records, the payment transfer, the photograph of Mia speaking with a reporter near JFK. Everett had stood there too long. That was the truth he could not outrun. He had not accused her with words. He had done something worse. He had allowed doubt to wear his silence. Mia turned the ring in her hand, and for the first time Everett saw the small inscription inside the band. The words he had asked the jeweler to engrave months ago after she laughed and told him trust was not a luxury item. Trust me before the world does. He stared at the line until the terminal blurred around it. He had placed those words inside a ring, then failed them the first time the world spoke louder than she did. I know the evidence was false, he said, his voice rough. Graham altered the files. Sloan helped stage the release. Olivia from IT sent the logs. The photo was cut from security footage. The transfer record was fabricated. Mia closed her eyes, not with relief, but exhaustion. The truth did not miss me, she whispered. You did. Everett could not answer. No boardroom had ever made him feel this powerless. No merger had ever left him standing with empty hands in a public terminal while the woman he loved measured him against the promise he broke. The speaker chimed again. Final boarding for flight 418 to Seattle. Mia stood. The suitcase handle clicked upright. Everett reached toward her, then stopped before touching her, because for once he understood that love without permission became another kind of control. Mia placed the ring in his open palm. The diamond felt heavier than it had ever looked. This ring was a promise, she said. Tonight, it became evidence. Then she turned toward the gate, and Everett stood frozen under the airport lights, holding the proof that he had arrived in time to clear her name, but maybe too late to save her heart. 3 weeks earlier, long before the airport lights turned Mia Bennett into a goodbye, Everett Callahan believed he was protecting her by keeping the ugliest parts of his world behind glass doors. Callahan Tower rose over Midtown Manhattan like a blade of silver, 58 floors of polished stone, Private elevators, security badges, aviation maps, and conference rooms where men in dark suits discuss storms, fuel prices, cargo routes, and billion-dollar contracts as if human lives were numbers moving across a screen. Everett moved through that world with quiet authority. He did not raise his voice. He did not repeat himself. When he entered a boardroom, conversations narrowed around him. When he signed a document, entire airport operations shifted across states. To the public, he was the billionaire chief executive officer who had turned his family company into one of the most powerful logistics and private aviation networks in America. To Mia, he was the man who forgot to eat when crisis meetings ran long, the man who stood at windows when he was worried, the man who slept with his phone face down because even in rest he expected bad news. She saw the parts of him the magazines never photographed. That was why she scared him. Love, to Everett, had always been easier when it could be managed. Meetings had agendas. Contracts had clauses. Aircraft had routes. Even storms could be tracked on radar. But Mia had walked into his life with warmth he could not schedule. She remembered that the lobby guard liked black coffee with 2 sugars. She sent thank you cards to assistants no one noticed. She once took off her gloves in February to help an elderly woman outside LaGuardia whose suitcase had broken on the curb. Everett had watched from his car as Mia knelt on cold pavement in a cream coat, laughing softly while tying the damaged handle with her scarf. That was the first time he realized she did not perform kindness. She lived inside it. Now, 3 weeks before their wedding, Mia stood in his office near the glass wall, looking out over the city while rain blurred the skyline. A paper bag of soup sat on his desk beside a stack of merger folders. 2 coffees waited for the night security team downstairs. She had brought them herself after learning their shift had been extended because of a systems audit. Everett loosened his tie and glanced from the soup to the files. You did not have to come all the way here. Mia turned, her hazel eyes soft but direct. You have said that every time I have come here. Because it is late. It is 8:40. That is late for someone who does not live in crisis rooms. She smiled faintly, but the smile did not reach all the way. Maybe I am trying to understand the rooms before I marry the man who lives in them. Everett looked toward the closed conference room door. Behind it, Graham Voss, his legal strategist, was waiting with a red folder marked confidential. Sloan Mercer had called twice about the Callahan Aviation Foundation gala. The board was tense over a pending aviation partnership, and one wrong rumor could cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. Everett wanted to tell Mia all of it. He wanted to say that pressure had teeth, that his family name was not just a name but an engine he kept running by force of will, that every day someone wanted access to him, leverage over him, a private angle. But each time he imagined letting Mia see that machinery, he imagined it crushing the gentleness he loved most. So he reached for the safe answer. Let me handle it. Mia looked at him for a long second. Outside, a siren passed far below on Madison Avenue. You say that like it is a love language. It is not. Not when it means I stand outside every door that matters. He exhaled, tired. Mia, I am not shutting you out. Then what are you doing? He walked toward her, stopping close enough to touch her hand but not taking it. Keeping things from touching you. Her face changed, not dramatically, but in the quiet way glass changes when a crack begins under the surface. Everett, I am not a porcelain cup in one of your boardrooms. I know that. Do you? She lifted the paper bag from the desk and set the soup closer to him. Because every time I ask what is wrong, you say it is complicated. Every time I notice someone lying, you say it is business. Every time I try to help, you tell me it is not my problem. Because it should not be your burden. I am about to become your wife. The word wife filled the room differently than fiancé. It made the silence heavier. Everett looked at the ring on her hand, the diamond catching the city light. He had chosen it from a private jeweler on 5th Avenue, but the inscription had been her idea without knowing it. Trust me before the world does. She had said that one night while they were stuck in traffic outside Newark after visiting a family assistance center for airline employees. He had remembered. He had engraved it. He had thought that counted as understanding. Mia followed his gaze to the ring and covered it with her other hand, not hiding it, just holding it as if it were warmer than the room. I do not need your world to be clean, she said. I need it to be honest. Everett almost told her then. About the leak rumors. About North Star Freight Advisory. About Graham's warning that someone close to the company might be feeding details to a journalist. About Sloan insisting the gala needed a loyalty theme to reassure donors and investors. But Graham opened the conference room door before he could speak. Tall, silver-haired, precise, Graham carried the red folder like it contained the weather. His eyes moved briefly to Mia, then to the coffees on the desk, then back to Everett. We need you in the room. Mia stepped back first. That small retreat should have warned Everett. Instead, he was relieved because the decision had been taken from him. I will be there in a minute, Everett said. Graham gave Mia a polished smile. Miss Bennett, generous of you to visit at this hour. People work at this hour, Mia replied. They still get hungry. Graham's smile tightened. Everett noticed it, but not enough. Mia picked up the 2 coffees meant for security. At the door, she turned once more. Do not love me from behind locked doors, Everett. Then she left, her footsteps quiet against the marble hallway, carrying warmth down to the lobby, while Everett walked into a room full of secrets. And behind the conference room glass, Graham placed the red folder on the table and said the sentence that would begin the lie that sent Mia to the airport. We may have a problem with your fiancé. The problem did not begin with Mia Bennett, but Graham Voss was careful to make Everett Callahan believe it had. Inside the conference room on the 56th floor, rain moved down the glass in silver lines while the city blurred below, and Graham opened the red folder with the solemn patience of a man unveiling a funeral notice. Everett stood at the head of the table, one hand on the back of a leather chair, his eyes still following the hallway where Mia had disappeared with 2 coffees for the night guards. Her words remained in the room longer than she did. Do not love me from behind locked doors. Then Graham slid the first page across the table. We traced an inquiry about the Westbridge Aviation Partnership, he said. Someone outside the executive circle knew numbers that have not been released. Everett looked down. The page showed a blurred photograph taken near JFK. A woman in a beige coat speaking with a man holding a press badge. Mia. Her hair was pulled back. Her profile was unmistakable. That is Mia, Everett said, not as an accusation, but as a fact his mind did not yet know where to place. Graham lowered his voice. Yes. Everett stared at the photograph. Why was she meeting a reporter? That is what concerns me. Across the table, Sloane Mercer sat perfectly still. One leg crossed over the other, silver bracelet shining under the recessed lights. She had arrived 10 minutes before Mia left, claiming she needed final approval for the pre-wedding charity gala. 33 years old, white, elegant in a pale gray dress, Sloane carried herself like a woman born in rooms where other people apologized for breathing too loudly. She had once been Everett's girlfriend, back when he still believed compatibility meant shared last names, shared schools, and shared seats at donor dinners. She had never forgiven him for choosing someone who brought soup to offices instead of strategy decks. Now she tilted her head toward the photograph with a delicate expression of concern. I hate that we even have to discuss this, she said. Everett did not look at her. Then do not. A faint silence passed. Graham cleared his throat. There is more. He placed a second page down. A payment record, small but ugly, routed through an old account connected to Mia's mother's medical debt from years earlier. The third page followed. A draft email supposedly sent from a personal account to a journalist, referencing cargo expansion terms and labor restructuring inside Callahan Global. Everett read each line once, then again, waiting for the paper to become impossible. It did not. It sat there under the lights with the cold arrogance of evidence. This could be fabricated, Everett said. Graham nodded, as if he had expected that and admired the loyalty. It could. That is why I am not recommending confrontation tonight. I am recommending containment. Sloane's voice softened. Everett, no one is saying Mia is guilty, but people under financial pressure can be approached, manipulated, used. His jaw tightened. Choose your words carefully. I am, Sloane said, and that was the cruelty of her. She always did. The foundation gala is in 6 days. Investors will attend. Aviation partners will attend. If this becomes public before you know the truth, the board will question your judgment, not hers. Everett looked at the ring on his own hand, the plain band he had started wearing privately after the engagement because Mia said promises should be practiced before ceremonies. He had laughed when she said it. He had worn it anyway. Now the metal felt colder. Mia does not care about money. Sloane gave him a sympathetic look that made the sentence feel childish. Everyone cares about money when they have not had enough of it. That was the line, polished and poisoned, where the room changed. Everett looked up slowly. Graham noticed. Sloane noticed. Neither apologized. Beneath their concern lived the old belief Mia had felt from the beginning, that kindness from a woman without wealth must be a disguise, that a middle-class fiancé could be charming at dinner but still suspicious near power, that love crossing class lines needed documentation before it deserved trust. Everett should have thrown the folder into the trash. He should have walked out, called Mia, and asked her the question directly with his heart open instead of his pride guarded. But leadership had trained him to study risk, not wounds. Wealth had trained him to believe betrayal always wore a familiar face. And fear had trained him to hear doubt as caution. Do not involve security, Everett said finally. Do not question her. Do not let this leave this room. Graham folded his hands. Of course. But behind his calm eyes, something settled into place. The first hook had caught. Hours later, after Everett left to take a call from the West Coast partners, Sloane remained in the conference room with Graham. The cleaners moved quietly in the hall. Callahan Tower dimmed around them, floor by floor, until the city looked less like a kingdom and more like a witness. Sloane stood near the glass wall, watching Everett's reflection vanish in the elevator bank. He defended her longer than I expected, she said. Graham returned the documents to the folder. He defended the idea of her. That is not the same as trusting her. Sloane smiled, small and sharp. At the gala, the idea will not survive the room. Graham's phone buzzed. A message appeared from an encrypted vendor, account labeled North Star Freight Advisory. The transfer is ready. The timestamp can be adjusted. Graham deleted it without changing expression. Sloane looked at him through the glass reflection. You are certain the leak cannot be traced back to you? Not if Callahan is busy looking at his fiancée. And the reporter? He thinks he is receiving a tip from someone protecting workers. Miss Bennett did meet him once, did she not? Sloane's smile widened. Because she was helping that ground employee at JFK. Good intentions photograph beautifully when cropped. For a moment, even Sloane seemed to admire the elegance of it. Mia's kindness would become the frame that trapped her. Her class would become motive. Her silence would become guilt. Her love for Everett would become the reason he hesitated long enough to lose her. Down in the lobby, Mia handed a coffee to the older security guard, asked about his daughter's college applications, and stepped into the rain without knowing that 56 floors above her, 2 people had already begun turning her compassion into evidence. And in the red folder on Everett's conference table, the first lie waited patiently for the night he would choose paper over the woman wearing his ring. 2 days after the red folder appeared in Everett's conference room, Mia Bennett saw the first crack in the lie that was being built around her, and it came in the reflection of a dark computer screen. It was raining again in Manhattan, the kind of steady spring rain that made the streets shine black and gold beneath taxi lights. Mia arrived at Callahan Tower a little after 9 with a paper bag from the deli Everett pretended not to like and 3 coffees balanced in a cardboard tray. One for Everett. One for the lobby guard whose daughter had just been accepted to Rutgers. One for the overnight receptionist who always smiled like she was trying not to fall asleep. This was how Mia moved through expensive spaces. She noticed the human parts. Not the marble. Not the art. Not the private elevator that opened only when Everett's name approved it. People. Names. Tired eyes. Empty coffee cups. The man she loved lived 56 floors above them, surrounded by glass walls and guarded doors. But Mia had learned that every powerful building had a heartbeat below the lobby line. Tonight, that heartbeat felt nervous. The guard, Mr. Alvarez, took the coffee but did not joke about her becoming Mrs. Callahan in 12 days. He looked toward the elevators, then back at her. Long night upstairs, he said carefully. Mia paused. Is Everett still in meetings? Yes, ma'am. He lowered his voice. A lot of legal visitors today. Legal visitors. Mia smiled gently, but something inside her tightened. Thank you. In the private elevator, she watched her own reflection rise through the numbers. 21, 37, 52, 56. Her engagement ring caught the elevator light. Trust me before the world does. She touched the band with her thumb, not knowing why the words felt heavier than usual. When the doors opened, the executive floor was dim except for the conference room at the end of the hall. Everett was not in his office. His suit jacket hung over his chair. His soup from 2 nights ago had never been finished. That small detail hurt more than it should have. Mia set the paper bag on his desk and stepped back into the hallway just as she heard Graham Voss speaking from the conference room. The timestamp can stay local. No one outside compliance will notice if the metadata is flattened before release. Mia stopped. She did not understand every word, but she understood the feeling of someone saying something they did not want heard. Through the narrow opening between the conference room door and the frame, she saw Graham standing near the wall display. On the screen was a vendor name she had never seen before, North Star Freight Advisory. Beneath it were cargo route charts, payment trails, and a file labeled Media Inquiry Support. Graham turned suddenly. Mia moved, not dramatically, not guiltily, just enough to appear as though she had been walking toward Everett's office. Graham opened the door fully. His face changed into politeness so smoothly it felt rehearsed. Miss Bennett. Mr. Voss. She lifted the coffee tray. I brought Everett dinner. Is he nearby? He was called into a secure meeting. At 9 at night? Aviation does not sleep. Neither do people who are worried. Graham smiled without warmth. You are very devoted. Mia heard the shape of the insult inside the compliment. I am engaged. Of course. He stepped out, closing the conference room door behind him. Not all the way, just enough to hide the screen. He may be unavailable for a while. I can tell him you came. Mia looked at the closed door, then back to Graham. What is North Star Freight Advisory? For 1 second, his eyes sharpened. It was brief, but she saw it. Then he gave a soft chuckle. A vendor. Nothing that should concern you. There it was again. The invisible wall. The same phrase in a different suit. Nothing that should concern you. Mia nodded because people who underestimated her often mistook quiet for acceptance. Good night, Mr. Voss. She left the food on Everett's desk, gave the extra coffee to the receptionist, and rode down with a feeling she could not name. By the next afternoon, that feeling followed her to JFK, where she had promised to meet a ground employee named Daniel Ruiz at a small coffee counter near Terminal 4. Daniel was not a friend exactly. He was one of the men she had met through an aviation family support program Everett's foundation donated to but rarely visited in person. He had a wife, 2 children, and the exhausted shoulders of someone who carried bad news home carefully so it would not scare the people waiting there. He sat across from Mia with both hands around a paper cup he had not touched. They want me to sign a statement, he said. Who does? Compliance. Legal. I do not know. They said I accessed route files I never opened. They said if I cooperate quietly, they can protect my job. Mia leaned forward. Did you access them? No. His voice broke slightly, not from weakness, but from holding too much fear in public. Miss Bennett, I load cargo schedules. I do not even have clearance for executive partnership files. But they showed me logs with my employee number. Mia felt cold despite the warmth of the terminal. Around them, travelers moved with bags and boarding passes, unaware that one man's life was being cornered by paperwork. Did you tell Everett? Daniel looked away. People like me do not call Mr. Callahan. We get called into offices. Mia absorbed that. People like me. People like her in another room under another kind of suspicion. She pulled a small notebook from her purse. Write down every time they spoke to you. Names, dates, anything you remember. Do not sign anything you do not understand. Why are you helping me? Because someone should. As Daniel wrote, Mia noticed a man near the window holding a phone too carefully in her direction. A press badge hung from his neck, turned halfway under his jacket. She had seen enough airport media days to recognize the look. He approached only after Daniel left. Mia Bennett? Yes. I am Carter Hale with Metro Business Wire. I was told you might have concerns about a Callahan Global internal leak. Her body went still. Who told you that? He hesitated. A source said you were trying to protect a ground employee. Mia stood, slow and steady. Then your source is using that employee and using me. I have no comment. He lifted his phone as if to record, but she stepped away before he could shape her silence into a headline. That evening, she called Everett 3 times. Each call went to voicemail. Finally, near midnight, he called back from what sounded like a moving car. Mia, I have been in crisis meetings all day. Everett, something is wrong. Graham is connected to a vendor called Northstar Freight Advisory, and an employee at JFK is being pressured to sign a false statement. A reporter approached me today because someone fed him my name. There was a pause long enough for doubt to enter and sit between them. Why were you meeting a reporter? Mia closed her eyes. That is not what I said. Then explain it clearly. His tone was controlled, but control could still cut. I met Daniel Ruiz because he asked for help. The reporter approached me afterward. You should have told me before meeting anyone connected to Callahan operations. I tried. You were unavailable. This is sensitive, Mia. A man is about to lose his job, and an entire partnership could collapse. She went silent. Outside her apartment window, rain tapped the fire escape in tiny metallic beats. Listen to yourself, she whispered. Everett exhaled. That is not what I meant. Yes, it is. You just finally said it without polishing it first. Mia, this is not your world. The sentence landed softly, almost calmly, and that made it worse. She looked down at her ring. The diamond blurred. Then why did you ask me to marry into it? Everett said her name, but she ended the call before he could soften the wound he had already made. In the quiet of her apartment, Mia opened her notebook and wrote 3 words under Daniel's timeline. Northstar. Graham. Reporter. She did not know yet that all 3 had been arranged to point back at her. She only knew that the man she loved had built a door between them, and someone else had just learned how to lock it from the outside. The charity gala was supposed to prove that Mia Bennett belonged beside Everett Callahan, but Sloan Mercer designed it to prove the opposite. 6 nights before the wedding, the Callahan Aviation Foundation filled the ballroom of the Whitmore Hotel on 5th Avenue with crystal light, white flowers, champagne glasses, and the kind of polished laughter that never reached anyone's eyes. Outside, rain moved down the windows in thin silver lines. Inside, old money donors discussed kindness from tables that cost more than a month of Daniel Ruiz's rent. A banner near the stage read loyalty in the skies, legacy on the ground, and Mia stood beneath it in a midnight blue dress she had chosen because it felt simple enough to breathe in. Her engagement ring rested on her hand, bright and heavy. Trust me before the world does. She repeated the words silently while Everett stood across the room with senators, investors, and board members circling him like satellites. He looked handsome in a black tuxedo, controlled and distant. His face softened only when his eyes found hers. For a second, Mia believed they could still cross the room between them. Then Sloan appeared at her side with a glass of sparkling water and a smile sharp enough to cut silk. You look lovely, Mia. Very understated. Mia kept her voice calm. Thank you. That is not criticism. Some women know better than to compete with a room they cannot afford. Mia looked at her fully. And some women mistake cruelty for elegance because no one has ever asked them to be kind. Sloan's smile did not move, but her eyes hardened. Kindness is charming in small rooms. In rooms like this, it can become expensive. Before Mia could answer, the lights dimmed. The conversation softened. Sloan walked to the stage with perfect grace, taking the microphone as the gala screens behind her shifted to photographs of airport workers, cargo teams, family assistance programs, and smiling children holding toy airplanes. Her voice warmed for the audience. Tonight, we honor loyalty. Not the kind printed in brochures, but the kind that protects institutions, families, and futures when no one is watching. Applause rose. Mia glanced toward Everett. He was watching Sloan, but his jaw had tightened. Graham Voss stood near the edge of the stage, one hand resting on a tablet. Something in Mia's stomach went cold. The first slides were harmless. Foundation grants, scholarship, programs, emergency meal vouchers. Then the screen changed. A heading appeared. Internal trust review. The room went quiet in the way powerful rooms go quiet when they sense scandal but want someone else to name it. Graham took the microphone from Sloan. His voice was steady, sorrowful, almost respectful. Earlier this week, Callahan Global learned that confidential aviation partnership details may have been shared with an outside media source. Because this foundation works closely with airport families and operations staff, we believe transparency matters. Mia stopped breathing. On the screen appeared the photograph from JFK. Her speaking with Carter Hale near the coffee counter. Cropped so Daniel Ruiz was absent. Cropped so her refusal looked like a secret conversation. A murmur passed through the ballroom. Everett turned toward the screen. His face drained of color. Graham continued. We are not making accusations tonight, but we are reviewing evidence, including communications and transfer records, to protect the integrity of our foundation and our partners. A second slide appeared. An email draft with her name implied. The third. A payment record routed through an account tied to her family's old debt. Mia heard someone behind her whisper. Her family had money trouble, did they not? Another voice answered. That explains a lot. The room did not need proof. It had class prejudice, and class prejudice knew how to dress itself as concern. Mia looked at Everett. Not at Graham. Not at Sloan. Everett. The man who knew she brought coffee to guards, who knew she had met Daniel to protect him, who knew she had tried to warn him. He stood frozen near the donor table, eyes locked on the evidence, as if the world had handed him a test and he had forgotten her face in the middle of it. Mia waited for him to move. One step would have been enough. One sentence. One hand raised to stop Graham. But Everett's silence stretched across the ballroom like a rope pulling tight around her throat. Sloan reclaimed the microphone with a wounded expression so polished it looked rehearsed by candlelight. No one here wants to believe kindness can be used as a cover. But loyalty is not proven by soft words. It is proven when pressure arrives. Her eyes found Mia. Kindness can be expensive when someone learns how to sell it. The room turned. Not all at once. Slowly. Cruelly. 100 wealthy faces looked at Mia as if the dress, the ring, the middle-class family, The years of service, the gentle smile, all of it had been a costume. Mia felt heat rise in her face, but she did not lower her head. She walked toward the stage, every step quiet, every camera phone lifting like a small black mirror. Everett finally moved, but only halfway. Mia. She stopped near the center of the ballroom and looked at him. Did you know? His mouth opened. No answer came fast enough. That was the answer. Her eyes filled, but she did not cry. Not there. Not for them. She turned to the room. Daniel Ruiz is not a leak. He is an employee being pressured to sign a false statement. I met the reporter because someone sent him to me. I tried to tell the man I am supposed to marry, but he told me this was not my world. A silence fell heavier than applause. Everett flinched as if she had opened a wound he had been pretending was strategy. Graham stepped forward. Miss Bennett, this is not the place. Mia looked at him. Of course it is. This is exactly the place you chose. Then she turned back to Everett, slowly removed the engagement ring, and held it in her palm. The diamond caught the gala lights, beautiful and merciless. You did not have to prove I was innocent to love me, she said. You only had to stand beside me before they decided I was guilty. She walked out of the ballroom without running, without shouting, without giving Sloane the satisfaction of collapse. The doors closed behind her. Only then did Everett look down at the empty place on her finger in his memory and understand that the first thing he had lost was not the wedding. It was the moment she waited for him to choose her, and he had chosen silence. By the time Mia Bennett reached Everett Callahan's penthouse, the rain had already washed the gala perfume from her skin, but it could not wash away the feeling of 100 wealthy strangers deciding her worth before the man she loved found his voice. The private elevator opened into quiet marble, warm lamps, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, the kind of home designed to make silence look expensive. Her small suitcase waited in the guest closet, half-packed from the week before, when she had been organizing things for the wedding trip they were supposed to take after the ceremony. White tissue paper still wrapped a pair of shoes she had bought on sale and never told Everett, because people in his world did not seem to understand the little victory of saving money on something beautiful. The wedding dress hung in the dressing room behind a cream garment bag. His presence felt almost cruel. Mia stood in the middle of the bedroom for a moment, still wearing the midnight blue dress from the gala, her hair loosened by rain, the engagement ring resting in her palm instead of on her finger. She had not thrown it away. That was the part that made her chest ache. If love had died cleanly, she could have left the diamond on the ballroom floor and walked away lighter. But love had not died. Trust had cracked first, and it had left love standing in the wreckage, confused and bleeding quietly. The elevator opened again behind her. Everett stepped out, breathing hard as if the ride up 56 floors had not been fast enough. His tuxedo was damp at the shoulders, his bow tie undone, his face pale in the soft light. For one second, he looked less like the billionaire chief executive officer of Callahan Global and more like a man who had just realized every locked door he built had trapped him on the wrong side. Mia, he said. She did not turn around immediately. She placed the ring on the dresser beside a framed photo from their engagement dinner, a photo where she was laughing and Everett was looking at her instead of the camera. You should go back, she said. They are probably waiting for you to explain the foundation crisis. I do not care about the room. She turned then, and the sadness in her eyes made the lie obvious before he could finish it. Yes, you do. You cared about the room while I was standing in it. Everett took the hit without moving. I was trying to understand what I was seeing. You were trying to decide whether I was still safe to love. His jaw tightened. That is not fair. No. Fair would have been asking me in private before letting Graham and Sloane turn my life into a slideshow. He looked toward the dresser, saw the ring, and his voice lowered. Why were you with Carter Hale at JFK? Mia let out a small, stunned laugh, but there was no humor in it. You followed me here to ask the same question in a quieter room? I need to know. No, Everett. You need to hear yourself. He walked closer, careful now, but still carrying the posture of a man trained to cross-examine problems until they surrendered. A reporter had information about confidential routes. There was a transfer record. Graham showed me emails. Graham showed you exactly what he wanted you to see. Then help me understand. I tried. When? At Callahan Tower. On the phone. In every conversation where I told you something felt wrong and you told me to let you handle it. Her voice did not rise. That made every word sharper. Daniel Ruiz was being pressured to sign a false statement. He was scared of losing his job. Everett. He has 2 children. He had logs with his employee number on files he could not access. I met him because he asked for help through the support program. The reporter approached me because someone sent him my name. Everett stared at her. Somewhere beyond the windows, the city flashed with rain and traffic. Why did you not tell me before meeting Daniel? Mia's face went still. Because every time I tried, you called it not my world. The words landed between them, and this time Everett could not pretend they were only words spoken in stress. He had said them. He had built them. He had believed that keeping Mia outside the machinery of his company protected her, when really it made her easier to isolate, easier to frame, easier for men like Graham and women like Sloane to turn her kindness into suspicion. I did not mean it that way, he said. Intentions do not erase impact. He looked at the ring again. Mia, I did not accuse you. Her eyes filled, but she held herself together with both hands at her sides. You did not defend me. That was worse, and he knew it. He stepped closer. I froze. No, you calculated. You looked at the evidence. You looked at the room. You looked at me. And for a few seconds, I watched the man who promised to trust me wait for strangers to make it easier. Everett closed his eyes. He had negotiated with hostile boards, federal regulators, unions, investors, men who smiled while threatening lawsuits. but he did not know how to negotiate with the truth of his own failure. Tell me how to fix this. Mia turned to the closet and pulled out the small suitcase. The sound of its wheels on the marble floor made his expression change. Where are you going? Seattle. For how long? I do not know. Mia, there is a community aviation support center there. They offered me a position last month. I said no because I was building a life here. Her voice broke on the word life, but she kept going. Tonight, I realized I was building it in a house where my character needed board approval. Everett moved toward the suitcase, then stopped himself. Please do not leave like this. She looked at him with a tenderness that hurt more than anger. I am not leaving like this because I stopped loving you. I am leaving because I still do, and if I stay tonight, I will start begging you to become someone you should have chosen to be before the gala. She picked up the ring from the dresser. Everett watched her close her fingers around it. You are taking it? Yes. He swallowed. Why? Mia looked down at the diamond, glowing softly in her palm. Because it was real to me. The words nearly broke him. She zipped the suitcase, took her beige coat from the chair, and walked toward the elevator. Everett followed only as far as the hall. He could have called the driver. He could have had security slow her down. He could have used every privilege his name had ever given him. Instead, for the first time that night, he did nothing. The elevator doors opened. Mia stepped inside. Before they closed, she looked at him one last time. You did not need proof to love me, but you needed proof not to doubt me. The doors slid shut, and Everett stood in the penthouse. With the wedding dress still hanging in the next room, the city shining like broken glass beyond the windows. Minutes later, his phone lit up with a travel notification from the account they had once shared for wedding plans. Mia Bennett, Flight 418, JFK to Seattle, one way. And somewhere deep inside Everett's perfect, protected world, the silence finally turned into fear. Everett Callahan did not chase Mia to the airport first. That failure would punish him later. For several unbearable minutes after the elevator doors closed, he stood alone in the penthouse with rain sliding down the windows and the wedding dress hanging in the next room like a ghost of a life he had not protected. The travel notification glowed on his phone. Mia Bennett, Flight 418, John F. Kennedy International Airport to Seattle, one way. He stared at the words until they became less like information and more like a verdict. His first instinct was command. Call the driver. Call airport security. Call the private terminal director. Stop the boarding process. Delay the flight. Use the power that had never failed him in public. But Mia's voice came back before his thumb touched the screen. You did not need proof to love me, but you needed proof not to doubt me. Everett lowered the phone. If he used power to hold her now, he would only prove she had been right to leave. So he did the one thing he should have done before the gala. He went back to the truth. He returned to Callahan Tower in the same damp tuxedo, hair still wet from the rain, walking through the lobby so late that only the cleaning crew and the overnight guards remained. Mr. Alvarez stood when he saw him, startled. Everett stopped at the security desk. 2 empty coffee cups sat beside the monitor, both with Mia's careful handwriting on the lids. One said Mr. Alvarez. One said Jenna, overnight desk. Everett looked at those names and felt the weight of what he had not seen. Mia had learned the people in his building while he had been busy protecting rooms from her. Did Miss Bennett bring these? He asked. Mr. Alvarez nodded slowly. Yes, sir. She always does when she comes late. Everett swallowed. Did she say anything that night? She asked whether you were still upstairs. She looked worried. A simple sentence. A normal sentence. But it struck him like evidence no forged payment record could match. Worried people did not sell secrets. They tried to warn the person they loved. Everett took the private elevator to the 56th floor. But this time the marble hallway looked different. Not powerful. Hollow. The conference room was dark. Graham's red folder still sat locked inside a glass cabinet. Because men like Graham believed locked things were safe. Everett opened it with his executive access and spread every page across the table. The photograph, the transfer record, the email draft, the internal access log with Daniel Ruiz's employee number. He forced himself to read not as a chief executive officer protecting a company, but as a man trying to understand how he had been led away from the woman who had begged him to listen. The first crack appeared in the timestamp. The email draft was marked at 7:42 p.m. Eastern Time, but Mia had been on a video call with the wedding florist at that exact minute. He knew because he had walked behind her camera and made her laugh. He found the calendar invite in his own inbox. Then the photograph at John F. Kennedy International Airport showed Mia near the coffee counter at 3:18 p.m., but the gate security footage from the Foundation archive placed Daniel Ruiz beside her until 3:22 p.m. The gala slide had cropped Daniel out. Deliberately, Everett's breathing changed. He called Olivia Chase, the head of Information Technology Compliance, at 12:36 a.m. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice cautious and awake in the way of someone who had been waiting for conscience to overcome fear. Mr. Callahan, I need the raw access logs for the Westbridge leak. Not Graham's summary. The original logs. Silence. Then a quiet answer. I was hoping you would ask. 15 minutes later, Olivia arrived through the executive elevator in jeans, a raincoat, and no makeup, carrying a laptop pressed against her chest. She did not sit until Everett asked her twice. I flagged irregularities 3 days ago, she said. I sent them to Mr. Voss because protocol required legal review. Everett's face hardened. And Olivia opened the laptop. And the next morning, my access to the review folder was restricted. She turned the screen toward him. The original server logs showed that Daniel Ruiz's employee number had been used from an executive floor terminal, not from airport ground operations. A second access point traced back to Graham's conference room tablet. Another document showed a metadata edit linked to Northstar Freight Advisory. Everett looked at the vendor name and remembered Mia's warning. Northstar, Graham, reporter. She had seen the crack before all of them. He had called it not her world. Olivia clicked to another file. There is more. A message routed through the vendor account to a media contact. It references Miss Bennett by name. Everett leaned in. The message was short. She is protecting an airport worker. Approach her near Terminal 4. Make it look like she came to you. For the first time that night, Everett felt anger burn clean through the fog of guilt. Not loud, not wild, precise. Who authorized Northstar? Graham Voss. And Sloan Mercer? Olivia hesitated, then opened an event planning file from the Foundation Gala. A draft slide deck had been shared 48 hours before the event. Sloan's comments appeared in the margin. Lead with loyalty. Let the room understand motive before she speaks. Everett read the sentence twice. Let the room understand motive. Not facts. Motive. They had used Mia's class, her family debt, her kindness, her access to workers, everything that made her human, and turned it into a costume of guilt. His phone buzzed. A voice memo arrived from an unknown number. The text beneath it read, Miss Bennett told me not to sign anything false. She was trying to help. My name is Daniel Ruiz. Please listen before they make this worse. Everett played it on speaker. Daniel's voice filled the room, tired and nervous, explaining the pressure, the false statement, the meeting with Mia, the reporter who arrived after she refused to comment. By the end, Olivia looked down at the table. Everett did not move. The evidence had arrived. The truth was here, but the woman who had carried. That truth alone was on her way to an airport gate with his ring in her hand. Everett closed the laptop carefully. Send these files to the board, outside counsel, and my personal secure drive. Preserve everything. No one deletes a single record. Olivia nodded. What about Mr. Voss? I will deal with Graham in daylight. He picked up his phone, called his driver, then stopped before the call connected. Too slow. He grabbed his coat and moved toward the elevator. Olivia followed him to the hallway. Mr. Callahan, what should I tell the board? Everett turned back, his face pale, his eyes finally stripped of arrogance. Tell them the woman they watched me fail was telling the truth. The elevator doors opened. He stepped inside and called Mia. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. In the car, Manhattan blurred past in wet streaks of yellow cabs, traffic lights, and midnight storefronts. Everett watched the minutes disappear on his phone as if each one were being taken from Mia's heart, not from the clock. Flight 418. Final boarding soon. He reached the terminal breathless, crossed security with clearance he hated needing, and ran through the long bright corridor toward gate B27. Then he heard the announcement for Seattle, saw the blue seats near the rain-streaked window, and at last saw Mia standing there with her suitcase, her face wet with quiet tears, and the ring still held in her hand. Everett saw Mia before she saw him, and the distance between them felt longer than every mile his company had ever flown. She stood at gate B27 beneath the clean white airport lights, her beige coat folded over one arm, her navy suitcase upright beside her, her boarding pass bent softly in her left hand. In her right hand, she held the ring, not hidden in a pocket, not abandoned on a table, held, like a wound she could not stop pressing because pain was still proof that something had been alive. Outside the wide terminal windows, rain blurred the runway into streaks of red and blue, and a plane waited in the dark with its door still open. The airline screen read Seattle on time. Those two words seemed almost cruel. On time. The truth had not been on time. His trust had not been on time. His apology had crossed Manhattan at midnight and arrived breathless, carrying evidence, guilt, and the terrible knowledge that facts could clear her name but still leave her heart standing alone. Mia, he said. She turned. Her eyes were wet, but her face was calm in a way that frightened him more than tears. This was not the face of a woman waiting to be rescued. This was the face of a woman who had already rescued the only thing she could still control, her dignity. Everett stopped a few feet away, his black overcoat open, tuxedo collar damp from rain, phone still glowing in his hand with Olivia Chase's files, Daniel Ruiz's voice memo, and the raw access logs that proved everything Mia had tried to tell him. I know, he said, but even as the words left him, he heard how small they were. Mia looked at him as if she could hear it too. You know what? Graham created the false logs. Daniel's employee number was used from an executive device. The payment record was fabricated through Northstar. Sloan reviewed the gala slides before anyone saw them. The reporter was sent to you. He swallowed. You were telling the truth. Mia closed her eyes for 1 second. Anyone else might have called that relief. Everett knew better. Relief had warmth. This was exhaustion. The kind that came when someone finally opened a door after the house had already burned cold. I was telling the truth yesterday, she said, and the day before, and the night I called you. I know. No, Everett. You know now. The announcement tone chimed above them. Several passengers began gathering near the boarding lane, lifting backpacks and rolling bags forward. Life moved around them with ordinary impatience, people checking phones, finding passports, adjusting coats, unaware that a billionaire who could rear out aircraft and renegotiate terminal contracts was standing helpless before a woman with one suitcase and his whole future in her palm. Please do not board, he said, softer this time. Not an order. A plea stripped down to its bones. Mia looked toward the gate agent, then back at him. Why? The question stunned him. Because I love you came first in his mind, but it no longer felt like enough. Love had been present in the ballroom too. Love had stood there silent while she was humiliated. Love, without courage, had done damage. Because I failed you, he said, And I need to make it right. Making it right for whom? Her voice trembled only slightly. For the board? For the foundation? For your name? For the investors who watched your fiancé become a scandal between dessert and applause? For you? Then why did I have to leave for you to listen? He had no answer that would not insult them both. He looked down at the ring in her hand. I saw the inscription. Mia's fingers tightened around it. You chose it. You said it first. I meant it. Her eyes lifted to his. I thought you did too. The words entered him slowly, deeper than accusation. Around them, the airport felt suspended. A glass room floating above rain and engines and missed chances. Everett remembered the night he had ordered the ring. The jeweler had offered brighter stones, larger stones, cleaner stones, all arranged beneath velvet lighting on Fifth Avenue. But Everett had cared only about the words inside the band, because Mia had once said trust was not romantic when it was easy. It was romantic when the world made doubt convenient. He had thought engraving the line meant he understood it. Tonight, with the diamond sitting in her palm instead of on her finger, he finally understood that a promise engraved in gold meant nothing if it did not move through a room before humiliation did. I should have stopped Graham the second your face appeared on that screen, he said. I should have walked to you. I should have told everyone that no evidence mattered until I heard you. I should have protected Daniel because you asked me to look. I should have known Sloane was speaking from resentment, not concern. I should have trusted the woman I asked to share my life. Mia looked down, and one tear fell onto the side of her hand near the ring. She wiped it quickly, almost angrily, as if she hated giving the moment that much of herself. The truth did not miss me, she said. You did. Everett nodded because denial would have been another betrayal. Yes. The simple agreement hurt her. He could see it. It hurt because she had expected him to argue, to defend, to polish the failure until it sounded less sharp. Instead, he stood in front of her with nothing but the damage. I am going to clear your name publicly, he said, at Callahan Global, at the foundation, in front of every person who watched that room turn on you. You should do that because it is right, not because you want me back. I know. And Daniel, protected, compensated. His record cleared by morning. Graham, removed from access tonight. Outside counsel will take over. Sloane. Everett's eyes darkened, not with old affection, but with final recognition. Finished with the foundation. Finished with my life. Mia watched him carefully, and for a moment he saw pain battling hope inside her. Hope was still there. That almost destroyed him. She opened her hand and looked at the ring one last time. Then she placed it in his palm. Not dramatically. Not with anger. With grief so controlled it felt sacred. This ring was a promise, she said. Tonight, it became evidence. His fingers closed around it, and the metal felt unbearably cold. Mia, do not ask me to stay because you found proof. Then what can I ask? She looked past him toward the rain, toward the plane, toward a city that had given her love and humiliation in the same week. Ask yourself why proof had to arrive before trust. The final boarding announcement sounded above them. Mia lifted her suitcase handle. Everett stepped aside, took everything in him. Every instinct built by money, power, fear, and control demanded that he stop her. But love, if it was going to survive, had to stop acting like ownership. She walked toward the gate. At the scanner, she paused, not turning all the way back. Clear the room where they broke me, she said. Then maybe one day I will believe you know how to stand in one. The gate agent scanned her boarding pass. The small beep sounded clean and final. Everett stood under the lights with her ring in his hand as Mia disappeared down the jet bridge, and for the first time in his life, the most powerful thing he could do was let her go. The next morning, Everett Callahan walked into Callahan Tower with Mia Bennett's engagement ring in his pocket, and no defense left for the man he had been the night before. Manhattan looked washed clean after the storm, sunlight breaking between steel buildings, yellow cabs flashing through puddles, office workers crossing Madison Avenue with coffee cups and tired eyes. But inside Everett, nothing felt clean. The airport had ended with a small beep at the boarding scanner, a jet bridge, and Mia disappearing toward Seattle because he had learned the truth too late to stop the hurt. He had spent the ride back from John F. Kennedy International Airport holding the ring in his palm, turning it until the inscription caught the passing streetlights. Trust me before the world does. By sunrise, those words no longer felt romantic. They felt like a witness. At 8 o'clock, the same ballroom guests, board members, foundation directors, legal partners, and executive staff who had watched Mia's humiliation received an emergency summons to Callahan Tower. At 9:15, Everett entered the main conference auditorium without music, without prepared charm, without Sloane Mercer at his side, without Graham Voss beside the screen. Graham was already locked out of every system, sitting in a separate legal review room with outside counsel. Sloane had arrived in ivory silk and cold confidence, believing she could still shape the story if she looked wounded enough. Everett did not look at her once. He stood at the front of the room in a dark suit, pale from no sleep, and waited until every whisper died. On the screen behind him was not Mia's cropped photograph. It was the full security footage from Terminal 4. Mia sitting with Daniel Ruiz. Mia listening while he showed her papers. Mia standing when Carter Hale approached. Mia refusing to speak on camera. The room went still as context returned to the image they had used to judge her. Everett placed both hands on the podium. Last night, this room was shown selected evidence implying that Mia Bennett betrayed Callahan Global and this foundation. That implication was false. Sloane shifted in her chair. Graham's empty seat near the legal table seemed louder than any voice. Everett continued, each word clear enough for the back row. The access logs were altered. The payment record was fabricated. The photograph was cropped to remove Daniel Ruiz, an employee who came to Miss Bennett because he was being pressured to accept blame for a leak he did not cause. The vendor account used to route those materials was connected to North Star Freight Advisory, approved through Graham Voss. The gala slide sequence was reviewed in advance by Sloane Mercer. A low murmur moved through the room. Sloane stood. Everett, this is a serious accusation. He finally looked at her. Not with anger, with finality. It is a documented finding. Olivia Chase stepped forward and played Daniel's voice memo. His tired voice filled the auditorium, explaining how Mia had told him not to sign anything false, how she had tried to protect his job, how the reporter appeared only after someone else sent him there. Several people looked down. Others avoided looking anywhere at all. Shame had a different sound from scandal. It was quieter. Everett reached into his pocket and closed his hand around the ring, but he did not take it out. That part was not for the room. Daniel Ruiz's record is cleared effective immediately, he said. He will receive full back pay for the suspension period, a written apology, and continued employment protection. Outside counsel will review every action connected to Graham Voss, North Star Freight Advisory, and the Westbridge leak. Sloane Mercer is removed from all foundation leadership roles, effective now. Sloane's face lost its softness. You are doing this because she left you. Everett looked at the room, not at her. No, I am doing this because she was right. Silence. Then he said the thing that mattered more than the data, because facts could clear Mia's name, but only truth could expose his failure. I failed the woman I loved by asking the room for proof before I gave her trust. I allowed class prejudice to dress itself as caution. I allowed kindness to be treated like a motive. I allowed silence to stand where I should have stood. His voice roughened, but he did not stop. Mia Bennett did not betray Callahan Global. She protected an employee this company nearly sacrificed. She protected the truth before the people with power were willing to hear it. And last night, when she deserved my public loyalty, I gave her hesitation. That was mine, not hers. In the back row, Mr. Alvarez from security wiped his eyes quickly and pretended to adjust his glasses. Olivia looked at the floor. Even some donors who had whispered at the gala sat very still, their polished faces stripped of performance. Everett ended the meeting with no applause invited and no forgiveness requested. The correction went to the board, the foundation, Daniel's personnel file, and every guest who had attended the gala. By noon, Carter Hale published the full timeline after receiving verified records from outside counsel. By evening, Sloane's name disappeared from the foundation website. By the following week, Graham Voss was no longer affiliated with Callahan Global, and Daniel returned to work with a written apology signed by Everett himself. But Mia did not call. She did not text. She did not send back the ring, because she had already placed it in Everett's hand at the gate. That was the lesson. Public justice was necessary, but it was not a key to her heart. 3 weeks later, Everett flew commercial to Seattle with no press notice, no security parade, no private terminal, and no assumption that arrival meant access. He wore a plain dark coat, carried one small bag, and waited outside the Rainier Aviation Family Support Center until a volunteer at the desk asked if he had an appointment. He did, not with Mia, with the program director. He had funded a meal voucher expansion anonymously first, then asked permission to help in person. Mia found him in the supply room at 4:30 in the afternoon, sleeves rolled up, labeling boxes of winter coats for ground crew families, and sorting grocery cards into envelopes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She wore jeans, a soft green sweater, and her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked tired in a new way, but lighter too, as if distance had given her room to breathe. Everett stood slowly. I did not come to take you home. Her eyes searched his face. Then why are you here? He looked at the envelopes, the coat boxes, the bulletin board covered with shift schedules and children's drawings. Because this is your world, and I should have respected it before I needed it to teach me who you were. Mia looked away first, and that small mercy almost broke him. He reached into his coat pocket and took out the ring box, but he did not open it. He placed it gently on the table between the meal vouchers and a stack of bus passes. I am not asking you to wear it. Her breath caught. Everett. I know. He nodded, accepting the ache before she could explain it. I do not want a promise from you because I corrected a record. I do not want forgiveness because I exposed the people who hurt you. I want to become the kind of man who stands beside you before the world decides what you are worth. Mia looked at the small box. The room hummed with ordinary sounds. A printer working, volunteers laughing softly down the hall, rain tapping against Seattle windows. No chandelier, no gala, no boardroom, no one watching except the life she had chosen to keep serving. Finally, she picked up a stack of meal vouchers and handed half to him. These need to be sorted by family size. Everett took them carefully. I can do that. And no special treatment. For the first time in weeks, something almost like a smile touched her face. Everett felt it like sunlight. No special treatment. She moved to the other side of the table and began sorting. He stood across from her, not as a billionaire waiting to be forgiven, not as a man trying to reclaim what he lost, but as someone allowed to begin at the smallest possible place. After several quiet minutes, Mia reached for the ring box, opened it, and looked at the inscription inside the band. Trust me before the world does. She did not put it on. She closed the box and set it beside her, not rejected, not accepted, simply present. Then she looked at Everett and said, Trust is not a speech. He nodded. I know. Mia handed him another stack of vouchers. Then keep showing up. And Everett, who had once believed love meant protecting her from his world, finally understood that. Love meant entering hers with humility, standing where she stood, and earning one ordinary day at a time the chance to be chosen again.